There's a series of photographs taken in California in 1878 that shows something the human eye had never been able to see clearly. 12 black and white images of a horse at full gallop, captured in fractions of a second, one after another. If you look at them in quick succession, something happens. The animal appears to move, not because the photos are animated, but because the brain fills in the gaps between them and constructs motion where there are only frozen moments. That sequence of photographs was not yet cinema, but it already contained cinema's most fundamental principle. The history of film does not begin in a darkened theater or with a sudden invention. It begins much earlier, at the intersection of a very old question and a set of discoveries that took centuries to come together. The question was simple and, at the same time, impossible. How do you make an image seem alive? Answering it required solving several more basic problems first. How to project images onto a surface. How to fix images of the real world. And how to chain still images together to create the illusion of motion. None of those three things arrived at once. Each had its own path, its own inventors, its own failures. Cinema was the result of all three finally converging in the same device. The camera obscura is one of the oldest ancestors of that process. The principle is straightforward. If you make a small hole in one wall of a completely dark room, the light coming through projects an inverted image of the outside world onto the opposite wall. Not a painting, not a drawing, but a real image formed by light itself. The phenomenon had been known since antiquity. Over time, the camera obscura shrank down to the size of a portable box, and painters used it as a tool for tracing outlines with precision. But capturing that image permanently was a different problem entirely. The camera obscura projected, but it could not fix. The image vanished the moment you closed the hole. The magic lantern approached the problem from the opposite direction. Instead of capturing light from the outside, it projected light from within. It consisted of a light source, a set of lenses that focused the beam, and a painted glass plate that, when the light passed through it, cast an enlarged image onto a wall or screen. It appeared in Europe in the 17th century and became a popular form of entertainment for a long time. Traveling showmen used it to display images to audiences who had never seen anything like it. It was a form of collective projection. Its basic logic, a light source passing through an image and casting it onto a surface, is exactly the same logic that the first movie theaters would use 2 centuries later. But neither the camera obscura nor the magic lantern could produce motion. For that, it was necessary to understand how visual perception works, and how to fool it. The 19th century brought a series of optical toys that look like minor curiosities, but are actually the conceptual heart of all cinema. The thaumatrope was the simplest of them, a cardboard disc with a different image on each side, suspended by strings that spun it rapidly when pulled tight. If one side showed a bird and the other a cage, spinning the disc fast enough caused the two images to merge, and the bird appeared to be inside the cage. It was a trick of perception based on a phenomenon known as persistence of vision. When an image reaches the eye and then disappears, the retina holds onto it for a fraction of a second. If another image arrives before the first one fully fades, the brain combines them. At the right speed, a succession of different images becomes the illusion of a single image in motion. The phenakistoscope, developed almost simultaneously by the Belgian Joseph Plateau and the Austrian Simon von Stampfer around 1832, took that principle further. It was a disc with a series of drawings arranged in a circle, each one slightly different from the one before. When the disc was spun in front of a mirror and viewed through small slits cut into the disc itself, The drawings succeeded each other fast enough for the eye to read them as continuous movement. A figure could appear to walk or jump. It was just a disc and a mirror, but it was already the same logic that cinema would use decades later. The zoetrope expanded on the idea. A cylinder with slots cut into the sides and a strip of drawings inside that, when spun, animated the figures for several viewers at once. The praxinoscope, invented by the Frenchman Émile Reynaud in 1877, refined the mechanism by replacing the slots with interior mirrors, producing a clearer image. Reynaud eventually projected his animations for paying audiences in Paris using an expanded version of the device. That happened before cinema, as we know it existed. A crowd gathered in front of moving images, paying to watch them. The idea was already there. What was missing was for those images to be real rather than hand-drawn. Photography was the breakthrough that changed that condition. Before it, every image had been made by human hands. Photography allowed light itself to record the world for the first time. The first permanent photographic images appeared in the 1820s and 1830s, with Nicéphore Niepce and Louis Daguerre in France. Over time, photographic processes improved. Exposure times shortened, materials became cheaper, and photography grew accessible. But there was still a central problem. To capture motion, you needed to expose an image in fractions of a second, and for a long time, the available materials were not sensitive enough to do that. That brings us back to the photographs of the horse. Edward Muybridge was a British photographer working in the United States who conducted a now famous experiment in 1878. According to the most widely accepted version of the story, the commission came from Leland Stanford, a railroad magnate and horse breeder who wanted to know whether a galloping horse ever had all four hooves off the ground at the same time, something the human eye could not confirm because it happened too fast. Muybridge set up a series of cameras along a track, with threads that the horse's hooves would snap as it passed, triggering the shutters in sequence. The result was 12 photographs taken fractions of a second apart, showing every phase of the gallop in precise detail. And the answer was yes. There was a moment when the horse had all 4 feet in the air. Photography had resolved what the eye could not see. Muybridge did not stop there. He went on photographing animals and people in motion, building sequences of dozens of images. When he arranged them in a device he called the zoopraxiscope, those real photographs appeared to move. They were no longer drawings. They were gestures and bodies captured from the real world that, when played back at the right speed, came back to life. Étienne Jules Marey arrived at the same problem from a different direction. He was a French physiologist, and his interest in motion was strictly scientific. He wanted to understand how birds fly, how a human being walks, how the heart beats. To study those movements, he needed to record them. Marey developed what he called chronophotography, a technique that captured multiple images at very brief intervals. His work on the flight of birds, published in the 1880s, was foundational. Marey was not looking for entertainment. He was looking for understanding. But his methods pushed photographic technology to limits no one had reached before, and his results fed directly into the work of those who came after him. What was still missing by the late 1880s was one final technical piece. The photographs of Muybridge and Marey were individual images captured on rigid plates of glass or metal. To capture continuous motion and reproduce it smoothly, you needed a flexible support that could be rolled up, advanced quickly through a mechanism, and exposed to light in fractions of a second. That support arrived in the form of celluloid, a clear plastic material manufactured in rolls that could be coated with a light-sensitive emulsion. With celluloid, it suddenly became possible to imagine a camera that could take not 12 photographs of a horse, but thousands of images of anything at all, one after another, on a continuous strip. By 1890, several inventors in different countries were working on that problem at the same time. No one had the complete solution. Everyone was approaching the same threshold from a different angle. There was a camera that did not quite exist yet. There was a transport mechanism no one had fully perfected. There was a way of projecting those images for an audience that had not yet been brought to market. But there were also decades of accumulated work. Lanterns that projected, toys that fooled the eye, photographs that froze motion, and scientific experiments that broke it apart. All of that work came from different places, from scientists who were not thinking about entertainment, from showmen who were not thinking about science, from photographers who were not thinking about spectacle. And yet, all of those paths were pointing toward the same place. The photographs of the horse are still the same. 12 still images, motionless. But when you look at them at the right speed, the animal runs.